All right. How is everyone doing tonight? We are going to read Chapter 2 of 1984, Part 2, Chapter 2 of 1984 tonight. In the previous chapter, Winston found himself a girlfriend, and they were planning in secret to meet somewhere. His lady friend gave him very complicated instructions on where to meet him on the weekend. So that's where we left off. This is not going to be just a straight reading of chapter 2. We are going to stop and talk about interesting vocabulary or talk about interesting phrases that we see. And this is for people who are learning English. But if you already speak English, then if you really like 1984 and you want to analyze all the different phrases and words, then this is also for you. Now, if you're watching this live with me, then I encourage you to ask questions. So if you see some words or phrases and you're not sure what they mean, please say something in the comments, and I will be happy to go over it with you, explain it to you, and learn with you sometimes. I already know there's a word in like the first sentence that we have to look up. So let's get started. All right, so we have chapter 2 of part 2. Winston picked his way up the lane through dappled light and shade. See, I don't know what that word dapple means. I've never heard that before. So I'm just going to ask ChatGPT. Dapple meaning. Dapple is a noun and a verb. Let's see. Small round spot or patch of a different color or shade from its surroundings. So they're talking about light here. Let's reread that. Winston picked his way up the lane through dappled light and shade. So imagine maybe like a tree. In the shadow of the tree, you can see little yellow spots of light. And I guess that's dappled. Stepping out into pools of gold wherever the boughs parted. And the boughs are like the branches of the tree. Under the tree to the left of him, the ground was misty with bluebells. I think he's on his way to see his girlfriend. I think we're already at that point. The air seemed to kiss one's skin. It was the 2nd of May. From somewhere deeper in the heart of the wood came the droning of ringdoves. Droning, well, you know what a drone is. That's something that people use in modern English. But that sound, the sound of drone is like the sound of a drone. Zzz. That's a droning noise. That's why they call it a drone, because it makes that noise. What are ringdoves? I don't know what ringdoves are. I guess, well, a dove is a type of bird. What exactly is a ringdove, though? Let's look at a picture. It's a bird. It's like a pigeon. How are they droning, though? There had been no difficulties about the journey. And the girl was so evidently experienced that he was less frightened than he would normally have been. So the girl really, when she gave him those instructions, it seemed like she really knew how to avoid being caught, like she had experience. So Winston wasn't really as nervous as he normally would be in a situation like this. Presumably, she could be trusted to find a safe place. In general, you could not assume that you were much safer in the country than in London. There were no telescreens, of course, but there was always the danger of concealed microphones by which your voice might be picked up and recognized. Besides, it was not easy to make a journey by yourself without attracting attention. For distances of less than 100 kilometers, it was not necessary to get your passport endorsed, but sometimes there were patrols hanging about the railway stations. Hanging about is a phrasal verb, and that means just being there doing nothing, hanging about, just standing there doing nothing. So at the railway station, there were patrols, police, just sort of standing there watching what was happening, who examined the papers of any party members they found there and asked awkward questions. So the patrols would be at the railway station, not checking everyone, but when they saw a party member, they would go to the party member and say, "Show me your papers." However, no patrols had appeared, and on the walk from the station he had made sure by cautious backward glances. So glances is looking, so he was always looking, that he was not being followed. The train was full of proles, in holiday mood because of the summery weather. The wooden seated carriage in which he traveled was filled to overflowing by a single enormous family, ranging from a toothless great-grandmother to a month-old baby, going out to spend an afternoon with in-laws in the country, and, as they freely explained to Winston, get hold of a little black market butter. The lane widened, and in a minute he came to the footpath she had told him of, a mere cattle track. Cattle is another word for cows. So just a path for cows, not really a place for people to walk, just a place where a lot of cows walk. Which plunged, that means go down, very fast, between the bushes. He had no watch, but it could not be 15 yet. The bluebells were so thick underfoot that it was impossible not to tread on them. Tread means walk, so it was impossible not to walk on these flowers. He knelt down and began picking some partly to pass the time away, but also from a vague idea that he would like to have a bunch of flowers to offer the girl when they met. He had got together a big bunch and was smelling their faint, sickly scent when a sound at his back froze him. The unmistakable crackle of a foot on twigs. He went on picking bluebells. It was the best thing to do. It might be the girl, or he might have been followed after all. To look round was to show guilt. He picked another and another. A hand fell lightly on his shoulder. He looked up. It was the girl. She shook her head, evidently as a warning that he must keep silent, then parted the bushes and quickly led the way along the narrow track into the wood. Obviously, she had been that way before, for she dodged the boggy bits as though by habit. So the boggy bits, that's maybe where there's some water or something. And dodging means avoiding. Actually, let's put the word dodge up here. That's a good word to know. To dodge. To dodge something means to avoid something. So she dodged the boggy bits. She avoided the places where there was water, like she already knew the path. Winston followed, still clasping his bunch of flowers. His first feeling was relief, but as he watched the strong, slender body moving in front of him with the scarlet sash, that was just tight enough to bring out the curve of her hips. The sense of his own inferiority was heavy upon him. Even now, it seemed quite likely that when she turned round and looked at him, she would draw back after all. Winston was afraid that she would change her mind. The sweetness of the air and the greenness of the leaves daunted him. Already on the walk from the station, the May sunshine had made him feel dirty and etiolated? What is that word? Let's see. Etiolated. Etiolated is an adjective describing something pale, weak, or lacking in vigor. So something weak, something not very strong. This is not a word that you have to know. I just want to see how to pronounce it, though. I think it's etiolated. Let's see. I'm just asking the internet.
And welcome back to this
YouTube commercial. Oh, I don't know. This is a waste of time. They're not pronouncing anything. All right, let's just keep going. Who cares? You won't ever use that word, but it means weak. The creature of indoors with the sooty dust of London. Soot is the black dust that comes from fire. So if you burn some wood, the black ashes, or the black coals from the black from coals is called soot. Actually, I think it's just from coals that you get soot. It's black. So let's see, the sooty dust of London in the pores of his skin. It occurred to him that till now she had probably never seen him in broad daylight, in the open. They came to the fallen tree that she had spoken of. The girl hopped over and forced apart the bushes, in which there did not seem to be an opening. When Winston followed her, he found that they were in a natural clearing, a tiny grassy knoll, surrounded by tall saplings. Those are little baby trees that shut in completely. The girl stopped and turned. "Here we are," she said. He was facing her at several paces' distance. As yet he did not dare move nearer to her. "I didn't want to say anything in the lane," she went on. "In case there's a mic hidden there." Mic is an abbreviation for microphone. So in case there's a microphone hidden there. "I don't suppose there is, but there could be. There's always a chance of one of those swine recognizing your voice." A swine is a pig. "We're all right here." He still had not the courage to approach her. "We're all right here." "We're all right here?" he repeated stupidly. "Yes, look at the trees." They were small ashes, which at some time had been cut down and had sprouted up again. Sprout is when a plant or a tree becomes bigger suddenly. Sprouting. Into a forest of poles. None of them thicker than one's wrist. None of them thicker than the wrist. There's nothing big enough to hide a mic in. Besides, I've been here before. They were only making conversation. He managed to move closer to her. She stood before him, very upright, like this. This is upright, very straight, with a smile on her face that looked faintly ironical, as though she were wondering why he was slow to act. So she's sitting there waiting for him to do something. The bluebells had cascaded onto the ground. They seemed to have fallen of their own accord. He took her hand. "Would you believe," he said, "that till this moment I didn't know what color your eyes were?" They were brown, he noted, a rather light shade of brown, with dark lashes. These are lashes right here. The hair, these are eyelashes. "Now that you've seen what I'm really like, can you still bear to look at me?" So she's, yes, easily. "I'm 39 years old. I've got a wife that I can't get rid of. I've got varicose veins. I've got 5 false teeth." "I could care less," said the girl. So Winston, who is feeling very insecure, says, "Now that you see me in the light, do you still like me?" And he's naming all of his problems. And she says, "I could care less." And that means, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I couldn't care less. Sorry, I couldn't care less. The next moment, it was hard to say by whose act. She was in his arms. At the beginning, he had no feeling except sheer incredulity. So incredulity means, I can't believe it. So he was incredulous. He couldn't believe what was happening. The youthful body was strained against his own. The mass of dark hair was against his face. And yes, actually, she had turned her face up and was kissing the wide red mouth. And he was kissing the wide red mouth. She had clasped, that's that word again, her arms, that means hold tightly, about his neck. And she was calling him darling, precious one, loved one. He had pulled her down onto the ground. She was utterly unresisting. He could do what he liked with her. But the truth was that he had no physical sensation except that of mere contact. All he felt was incredulity. Remember, that means, I can't believe this. I can't believe that's happening. Incredulity, incredulous. And pride. He was glad that this was happening. But he had no physical desire. It was too soon. Her youth and prettiness had frightened him. He was too much used to living without women. He did not know the reason. The girl picked herself up and pulled a bluebell out of her hair. She sat against him, putting her arm around his waist. "Never mind, dear, there's no hurry. We've got the whole afternoon. Isn't this a splendid hideout? A hideout is a place to hide. I found it when I got lost once on a community hike. If anyone was coming, you could hear them 100 meters away." "What is your name?" said Winston. "Julia. I know yours. It's Winston. Winston Smith. How did you find that out?" "I expect I'm better at finding things out than you are, dear. Tell me, what do you think of me before that day I gave you the note?" He did not feel any temptation to tell lies to her. It was even sort of love offering to start off by telling the worst. So remember, when she saw him in an earlier chapter walking in that neighborhood where he should not be, he panicked and thought, "Oh God, she saw me. I'm in trouble. I'm in really big trouble now." And he was even thinking about murdering her. So I wonder if he told her that. "I hated the sight of you," he said. "I wanted to rape you and then murder you afterwards. 2 weeks ago, I thought seriously, this was the incident. 2 weeks ago, I thought seriously of smashing your head in with a cobblestone. If you really want to know, I imagined that you had something to do with the thought police." The girl laughed delightedly, evidently taking this as a tribute to the excellence of her disguise. "Not the thought police? You didn't honestly think that? Well, perhaps not exactly that, but from your general appearance, merely because you're young and fresh and healthy, you understand. I thought you thought I was a good party member. pure in word and deed. Deed is the noun form of do. So pure in deed means pure in the things that I do. Banners, processions, slogans, games, community hikes, all that stuff. And you thought that if I had a quarter of a chance, I'd denounce you as a thought criminal and get you killed off. Yes, something of that kind. A great many young girls are like that, you know. It's this bloody thing that does it, she said, ripping off. So a sash, that's like something that you wear across your body. So and I think that hers said something like I don't remember what the name of the group was. The anti-sex league or something. So she's wearing this sash that says member of the anti-sex league, and she says it's this stupid thing, and she takes it off. Yeah, the scarlet sash of the junior anti-sex league, and flinging it on the bow. So remember, a bow is like a branch, and flinging means like throw. So she threw it, and then it went over the branch of a tree. Then, as though touching her waist had reminded her of something, she felt in the pocket of her overalls and produced a small slab of chocolate. She broke it in half and gave one of the pieces to Winston. Even before he had taken it, he knew, by the smell of it, it was very unusual chocolate. It was dark and shiny and was wrapped in silver paper. Chocolate was normally a dull brown. Dull means it's kind of the opposite of shiny. So if it's a dull brown, this chocolate does not reflect light. Crumbly stuff that tasted as nearly as one could describe it, like the smoke of a rubbish fire. So usually chocolate is very horrible, but the chocolate that she had was very unusual, seemed like very high quality chocolate. But at some time or another, he had tasted chocolate like the piece she had given him. The first whiff is when you smell something. The first whiff of its scent had stirred up some memory which he could not pin down. Let's put to pin something down. To pin down. That's a phrasal verb, to pin down. And that means like to identify, to be able to name something because you can identify it. So if you can't pin something down, it's like you can't identify it exactly. Let's see, how did they use that here? So he smelled the chocolate and it reminded him of something. He remembered something, but he couldn't pin it down. He couldn't remember exactly what that smell reminded him of. Right? Have you ever done that? You smell something, or you smell something and it reminds you of some place, but you don't remember where. So you can't pin it down. You can't identify it. Which was so powerful and troubling. Where did you get this stuff? He said. Black market, she said, indifferently. Actually, I'm that sort of girl to look at. I'm good at games. Wait, let me read that again. Black market, she said, indifferently. Indifferently means like, nah, I don't care. Because, usually if you go to the black market, that's a bad thing. And you should be scared to admit it. But she just said, black market. Like, it's no big deal. Actually, I am that sort of girl to look at. I'm not sure what that sentence means, to be honest with you. I'm good at games. I was a troop leader in the Spies. I do voluntary work 3 evenings a week for the Junior Anti-Sex League. Hours and hours I've spent pasting their body rot all over London. I always carry one end of the banner in one of the processions. I always look cheerful, and I never shirk anything. We've seen that word shirk in the previous chapters, and shirk means like ignore. So if you have a responsibility and you shirk your responsibility, It's like you're rejecting it. You're ignoring your responsibility. She says, I never shirk anything. I never ignore anything. I always do what I'm supposed to do. Always yell with the crowd. That's what I say. It's the only way to be safe. The first fragment of chocolate had melted on Winston's tongue. The taste was delightful. But there was still that memory of moving around the edges of his consciousness, something strongly felt but not reducible to a definite shape. So he's still thinking, why do I know this smell of this chocolate? Where is that from? I know I've experienced this before, but he doesn't know where or why. He can't pin it down. Like an object seen out of the corner of one's eyes, he pushed it away from him, aware only that it was the memory of some action which he would have liked to undo, but could not. You're very young, he said. You are 10 or 15 years younger than I am. What could you see to attract you in a man like me? It was something in your face. I thought I'd take a chance. I'm good at spotting people who don't belong. As soon as I saw you, I knew you were against them. Them, it appeared, meant the party, and above all, the inner party, about whom she talked with an open, jeering hatred, which made Winston feel uneasy. Although he knew that they were safe here if they could be safe anywhere, a thing that astonished him, that means like surprised, a thing that surprised him, sorry, I lost my place. A thing that astonished him, a thing that surprised him about her was the coarseness of her language. Okay, coarse is the opposite of soft. Actually, let's put that word up here. I want to put this word up here, coarse. And so it's not coarse like a class. It's even spelled differently. It sounds the same, but it has a different spelling, coarse. C-O-A-R-S-E. So that is like the opposite of soft. Let's see if we can find some pictures of something coarse. Just a second. I'm just typing the word coarse, C-O-A-R-S-E, into Google and to see what kind of things that we get. Remember, it's like the opposite of soft in a way. But you'll see in a minute how. So, imagine if you were walking with no shoes on this. That would, imagine that kind of feeling, and that's coarse. Let's see if we have any better pictures here. What else can we see that's coarse? See, coarse just means, if you know the word rough. So maybe the coffee in the middle is very coarse. Now, what do you think it means if it says that she uses coarse language? Now that we know what coarse means, what do you think that means? Coarse language. That means like bad language, rude language. A coarse person is a rude person. And somebody who uses coarse language maybe says bad words. So you see it says, I'm sorry, one second. You see it says here, the thing that astonished him about her was the coarseness of her language. So that sounds like she says bad words all the time. And then you can see in the next line, it says, party members were supposed not to swear. Swearing is saying bad language. You MF, or you some kind of, you get the idea. But that's coarse language. A coarse person says things like that. So this girl, she swears. We say maybe she swears like a truck driver. That's an old expression. You swear like a truck driver, because I guess truck drivers are famous for saying bad words. Okay, and Winston himself very seldom did swear. So seldom means not very often. So Winston not very often said bad words. Aloud, at any rate. Julia, however, seemed unable to mention the party, and especially the inner party, without using the kind of words that you saw chalked up in dripping alleyways. So he's saying Julia used the kind of language that you would see, what do you call that when people write things on the walls outside? That's called graffiti. So Julia used the kind of language that you would see in graffiti, in writing that you see on the walls outside, like very bad things. He did not dislike it, so he was okay with it. It was okay with him. He liked it. It was merely one symptom of her revolt against the party and all its ways. And somehow it seemed natural and healthy, like a sneeze of a horse that smells bad hay. They had left the clearing and were wandering again through the checkered shade, with their arms round each other's waists, whenever it was wide enough to walk abreast, for the two to walk abreast. He noticed how much softer her waist seemed to feel that the sash was gone. So remember, she took off her sash. That's like a something you wear around your body, and she wore that because she's part of the anti-sex league. So that identifies her as part of the anti-sex league. And she said, "Oh, forget this," and she took it off. And now Winston is thinking, suddenly she feels softer. She feels nicer now that she doesn't have the sash. They did not speak above a whisper. Outside the clearing, Julia said it was better to go quietly. Presently, they had reached the edge of a little wood. She stopped him. "Don't go out into the open. There might be someone watching. We're all right if we keep behind the boughs." The boughs are the branches of the tree. They were standing in the shade of hazel bushes, the sunlight filtering through the innumerable leaves. Innumerable means there are so many that you can't count them. So if there are innumerable leaves, there are so many leaves, it's impossible to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's too many. Was still hot on their faces. Winston looked out into the field beyond and underwent a curious, slow shock of recognition. He knew it by sight, an old, close-bitten pasture, with a footpath wandering across it and a molehill here and there. A mole is kind of like a mouse. So like a little mouse home, you could see a little molehill. In the ragged hedge, on the opposite side of the boughs of the elm trees, swayed just perceptibly in the breeze, and their leaves stirred faintly in dense masses, like women's hair. Surely, somewhere nearby, but out of sight, there must be a stream with green pools where dace were swimming. What's a dace? I don't know what a dace is. Let's see. Dace. I guess it's some kind of fish. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it's a type of fish. I've never heard of that before. Okay, let's see. Is there a stream? A stream is like a little baby river, very small river. Is there a stream somewhere near here? He whispered. That's right, there is a stream. It's at the edge of the next field, actually. There are fish in it, great big ones. You can watch them lying in their pools under the willow trees, waving their tails. It's the Golden Country, almost, he murmured. The Golden Country? It's nothing, really. A landscape I've seen sometimes in a dream. Look, whispered Julia. A thrush had alighted on a bough. I think that's a bird. Not 5 minutes away, not 5 meters away. Almost at the level of their faces, perhaps. It had not seen them. It was in the sun, and they in the shade. It spread out its wings and fitted them carefully into place again, ducked its head for a moment as though making a sort of obeisance. Its head for a moment, rereading the same line, to the sun, and then began to pour forth a torrent of song. So the bird started singing. In the afternoon hush, hush, well, that's a good word. Hush means silence. That's a rude way to tell someone to shut up. So if you're mad at somebody for talking, you can tell them hush, and that means shut up. It's kind of rude though, so be careful. Hush. Hush means quiet. All right, so in the afternoon hush, in the quiet of the afternoon, the volume of sound was startling. Startling is surprising. So the afternoon was so quiet, when the bird started singing, it was very surprising to hear because it was the only sound. The music went on and on, minute after minute, with astonishing variations, never once repeating itself, almost as though the bird were deliberately showing off its virtuosity. So almost as though the bird were trying to show everyone how wonderful it can sing. Sometimes it stopped for a few seconds, spread out and resettled its wings, and then swelled its speckled breast. Speckle means little dots. So well, here, let's take a look at speckle. We'll look at a picture of speckle. Oh, it's too bad. I don't like these pictures. Google used to be so much better at showing pictures. It doesn't do a very good job anymore. But this is like speckle, little dots. So if the bird has a speckled chest, you can imagine little dots like that on its chest. Maybe not so many, maybe a few, like 5 or 6, not like this. Or maybe like that, it depends. I've never seen a bird with that many speckles, though. No mate, no rival was watching it. What made it sit at the edge of the lonely wood and pour its music into nothingness? He wondered whether, after all, there was a microphone hidden somewhere near. He and Julia had spoken only in low whispers, and it would not pick up what they had said, but it would pick up the thrush. Perhaps at the other end of the instrument, some small, beetle-like man was listening intently. So Winston is thinking that bird is probably a microphone. That's how paranoid he is. Listening to that. But by degrees, the flood of music drove all speculations out of his mind. It was as though it were a kind of liquid stuff that poured all over him and got mixed up with the sunlight, that filtered through the leaves. He stopped thinking and merely felt the girl's waist in the bend of his arm was soft and warm. He pulled her round so that they were breast to breast. Her body, this is the breast area, so they were standing close together like this. Her body seemed to melt into his. Wherever his hands moved, it was all as yielding as water. Their mouths clung together. It was quite different from the hard kisses they had exchanged earlier, when they moved their faces apart. Both of them sighed deeply. The bird took fright and fled with a clatter of wings. Winston put his lips against her ear. "Now," he whispered. "Not here," she whispered back. Come back to the hideout. It's safer. Quickly, with an occasional crackle of twigs, they threaded their way back to the clearing. And when they were once inside the ring of saplings, those are little baby trees, saplings, she turned and faced him. They were both breathing fast, but the smile had reappeared round the corner of her mouth. She stood, looking at him for an instant, then felt at the zipper of his overalls. And yes, it was almost as in his dream, almost as swiftly as he had imagined it. Swiftly means quickly. She had torn her clothes off, and when she flung them aside, it was with the same magnificent gesture. Magnificent, big gesture movement. So she took her clothes and threw them with a big movement, by which a whole civilization seemed to be annihilated. So he's saying by her doing that, it seemed like she was destroying the entire civilization that they were a part of. Her body gleamed white in the sun. Gleam means like reflecting light, shiny. But for a moment, he did not look at her body. His eyes were anchored by the freckled face with its faint, bold smile. He knelt down before her, took her hands in his. Have you done this before? Of course, hundreds of times. Well, scores of times. I think score is 15 or 12. Let me see. How much is a score? I think maybe it's 15. How much is a score? Oh, 20. A score is 20. So scores of times means maybe, I don't know, 20, 40 times. Something like that. Maybe at least 40 scores. So that's got to be at least 40. Scores of times anyway. With party members? Yes, always with party members. With members of the inner party? Not with those swine. No, swine is a word for pig. But there's plenty that would, if they got half a chance. They're not so holy as they make out. His heart leapt. Scores of times she had done it. He wished it had been hundreds, thousands. Anything that hinted at corruption always filled him with wild hope. So he wished, she said she had done it maybe 40 times, maybe 60 times, but he wanted it to be hundreds of times, thousands of times, because he really admired people who broke the rules. Who knew, perhaps the party was rotten under the surface, its cult of strenuousness and self-denial simply a sham. A sham is like a joke. When something is a sham, it's ridiculous. So the party is a sham. It's a ridiculous thing that people take seriously. But under it, it's just stupid. A sham concealing iniquity. If he could have infected the whole lot of them with leprosy or syphilis, how gladly he would have done so. Anything to rot, to weaken, to undermine. Oh, to undermine, that's actually a pretty good word. Let's put that up here. To undermine something is to... Gosh, I don't even know how to... I'm going to check the definition, because I don't know how to explain that to you. Let's see. Erode the base or foundation, to lessen the effectiveness. Yeah, so to undermine authority is to make it weaker somehow, maybe by not listening to it or doing the opposite of it, to make it to help destroy it is what it means. Let's see, what are they? He's saying anything to undermine the party, anything to make the party weaker, to make it less effective, made him happy. He pulled her down so that they were kneeling face to face. Listen, the more men you've had, the more I love you. Do you understand that? Yes, perfectly. I hate purity. I hate goodness. I don't want any virtue to exist anywhere. I want everyone to be corrupt, to the bones. When when you say something to the bones, that means 100%. So being corrupt to the bones means being corrupt 100%. You like doing this. I don't mean simply me, I mean the thing itself. I adore it. That was above all what he wanted to hear. Not merely the love of one person, but the animal instinct, the simple, undifferentiated desire. That was the force that would tear the party to pieces. That was the force that would tear the party to pieces. He pressed her down upon the grass, among the fallen bluebells. This time there was no difficulty. Presently, the rising and falling of their breasts slowed to normal speed, and in a sort of pleasant helplessness, they both fell apart. What? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, they fell apart. Okay, I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. The sun seemed to have grown hotter, and they were both sleepy. He reached out for the discarded overalls. Discarded means thrown away. So they took off their clothes and threw them to the side, and now he's reaching out for the thrown away overalls. He wants them back. And pulled them partly over her. So he was covering her like a blanket. Almost immediately, they fell asleep and slept for about half an hour. Winston woke first, and he sat up and watched the freckled-faced, still peacefully asleep, pillowed on the palm of her hand. So pillow, that's what you sleep on. So pillowed on the palm of her hand. So she's using the palm of her hand like a pillow. Except for her mouth, you could not call her beautiful. There was a line or two around the eyes. If you looked closely, the short dark hair was extraordinarily thick and soft. It occurred to him that he still did not know her surname, that's her last name, her family name, or where she lived. The young, strong body, now helpless in sleep, awoke in him a pitying, a protecting feeling. But the mindless tenderness that he had felt under the hazel tree while the thrush was singing had not quite come back. He pulled the overalls aside and studied her smooth white flank. In the old days, he thought, a man looked at a girl's body and saw that it was desirable. And that was the end of the story. But you could not have pure love or pure lust nowadays. No emotion was pure, because everything was mixed up with fear and hatred. Their embrace had been quite a battle. The climax, a victory. It was a blow struck against the party. It was a political act. Oh, and that is the end of Chapter 2 of Part 2 of 1984. So we will finish here for today. And next time we will take a look at Chapter 3 of Part 2 of 1984. And I want to thank everyone who stayed and watched for the entire thing. And I hope that you will watch again. Thank you. Goodbye.